That way, if somebody is sick or can't make it, right, internet problems, these will be recorded and uploaded the same day so that you can watch them later. I think what I would recommend you guys do is to attend the lecture and just watch it, and then maybe later go back and rewatch the sections where I'm doing tutorials, right? Um, nice thing about YouTube is you can pause it, you can slow it down, you can put closed captions on, and it will make your life a little bit easier. Um, you can also go to the web and find solutions for any problems that you have, which is a good habit to get into. Lecture can't be shared or redistributed. Um, I mean, you can screenshot things if I'm demonstrating something, but like I said, it's all going to be on YouTube anyway. So generally, just plan on having that be your second stop. All right, so what I like to do is have you guys make a lot of cool stuff for me. And that way you can get excited about what sorts of things that you'll be making out there in the industry, right? It's hard not to get bogged down in the software. Maya is a very difficult piece of software. It's probably got something like a 15-year learning curve. So if you're starting out in 3D, if you've got some experience in 3D, that's great. You're still pretty low in the ranks. Like it's a long process to learn all of Maya, right? So generally what we do is we specialize, right? We choose things that we prefer to do and we chase after those goals. And I want to give you guys sort of a starting point, right? And build some good habits. And that way, when you do venture out to go make that giant Mecha Godzilla that you've always dreamed of making, right? You're not going to run into too many pitfalls, right? My goal really is to show you guys how to avoid those little death traps that are going to catch you and eat up hours of your time because either it's a buggy part of the software, right? The tool hasn't been updated in years or anything like that, right? There are lots of little areas where Maya wants you to do it its way, and the other guys might be doing it differently, right? I'm not gonna deny the existence of Blender and of ZBrush and 3ds Max, etc. But they do want me to teach you guys Maya, so this is what we're gonna follow through on. And it can be fun, but you just have to put in the hours, and you kind of have to get into that sort of Zen state of like, all right, I'm just pushing forward, right? I'm just keeping the train on the tracks and going where I need to go. So we have 3 projects, homeworks, and one bigger project really that we're going to be working on. They will all have technical requirements that includes poly count, and it includes specific ways of creating textures. So what this class ends up really being about is creating habits in you guys so that you can create 3D objects with professional level textures, right? It's easy to go out there, throw something together out of 3D shapes, and it can be pretty from a couple angles, right? It might fall apart in animation. It might not be easy to texture, right? So after a couple of years of teaching this class, right, I've seen what kinds of things go wrong, and I also know what steps you need to do to have a really good game-ready model at the end of the day. So that's what we'll focus on doing. We're also not going to aim too high because we have other classes to juggle, right? You guys have other homework. You only have a certain amount of time to complete these projects, right? So I've also kind of like capped difficulty levels based on how much time we have, which is another part of the process that you'll do organically by yourself, right? Once you understand what skills you have and how long it takes you to do things. Typically, your producer in the industry will have some idea of how long it's going to take people to do certain tasks. And if you keep up or beat those times, right, they're going to be happy with you. If you're a bit slow on their times, right, they might push you towards training and things. So this is first round of training, right? We'll get some low poly modeling in. It's good to start at the bottom, right, with low poly as the lowest possible poly, just so you understand all the things that are going on at the lowest level. That way, when you build up too high poly objects, right, what they really become is a product of a series of smaller objects, right, that are attached. So the second years, for example, are doing character models this year. Character model, you know, we see people all the time. We're like, oh, I can model that person out. I'll just kind of slap a face on there and get some clothes in, you know, put some armor and a cool hat on, and it'll be great. What ends up happening, right, when you're in 3D, building a character is like building the Statue of Liberty. It becomes this huge scale thing that like has all this detail all over it. And being able to tackle it a small piece at a time, right, is what we do in all aspects of game design, really. You have the big idea, right? It might be that you're a programmer and you want to create something like an ocean with waves, right? So you have to break your requirements down into something that fulfills the needs that you really have, right? Okay, if I say the ocean has waves, is it just that they're little wavy waves? Do they have to be able to crash, right? Is there a beach? Is there foam on the waves? Is there an underwater that the player can swim in? You have to be able to break down those requirements, right? So it's the same with 3D. You create your big goals, right? Your high level goals, typically through concept art. And then you figure out how you're going to break each of those pieces down, right, into simple modelable shapes that you can knock out very quickly, right? So being able to knock these small pieces out very fast, just like pump, 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 that's going to make it so much easier to tackle the bigger projects, right? Because you'll be able to mentally kind of break it down into which pieces need to be made first or what kind of scale you're working at, right? Another thing that we have to consider is where the camera is going to be, right? Is it going to be close up to the object, or is it going to be far away from the object? But another thing that sometimes gets swept under the rug is that all of our art here and game design is really about telling stories. If we can't tell a good story, we're going to lose our player base, right? They're not going to be interested. They're not going to come back to our games and play them some more. We've all got those games on our Steam list, in our, you know, PlayStation library, Xbox library, that we're like, yeah, it's really good graphics, you know, it plays quite well, but it just doesn't. I don't feel the need to go back and explore that world, right? We want to create worlds that capture people's imagination, that live inside your head, and like, when you see things in the real world, you're like, oh, it's just like Cyberpunk, how they have those commercials, or it's just, you know, it's just like Death Stranding, how there are ghosts everywhere, you know. That's a Laura call out. I didn't play Death Stranding. But the goal, right, is to have something really cool at the high level that we're aiming towards. If you don't have something that's going to be your guiding light, right, then the train is going to come, and it's the light at the end of the tunnel is no longer going to be the light that you think it is, right? You're going to get hit by the train. So look for opportunities, right, to tell interesting stories, right? When you see an image that has a bit of story in it, it's just so much richer than something that might just be a technical execution, right? Like if you find the right details, you can really capture people's imagination, and they'll fill in the gaps, right? Like you don't need to necessarily do 100% of the work, because once something lives in somebody else's imagination, they're doing half the work for you. So these are some concepts by an artist that I follow, Matt Ferguson, who makes these really excellent posters, right? So I just wanted to show you these because I ordered one of his posters, and this little abomination, came in the mail with the poster as like his sketch for when he first came up with the idea, right? So what that turned into is this, right? We might not be able to see all of these details in his sketch, right? But he knows what he's aiming for with this sketch, right? He has the vision. He just needs to get something down on paper as a reference point, right? He knows what's going to go in there. He knows how much detail is going to be on those objects, what colors possibly. Um, but it can all be captured with very dirty, small sketches, right? You don't necessarily need to have the greatest concept art skills in the world. You don't have to have any concept art skills besides just getting lines down on paper, right? Matt Ferguson is that guy's name. I got two of his posters on my walls actually. I've got a really nice Spider-Man poster from him too. All right. You can also go and ask professional or aspiring concept artists for permission to use their work. Is where it comes in handy to have a few artist friends, in the industry. If you're not an artist, and you can be like, yo, I really like that snail merchant trader that you made. Like one of my friends made a snail rider merchant for like just an art bash they do like every day. And I was like, let me steal that so I can maybe make something out of it one day. And then I got halfway through it and I found another thing to go chase. So another option that you can do if you're fluent in Photoshop, right? If Photoshop is more of your jam, is you can photo batch things together, which is you grab a bunch of existing art and photos, right? You cut them out almost like a scrapbook back in the day, and you put things back together in an interesting way. Some people use that to actually create commercial work, right? You can actually get work as like a matte background artist and things. A lot of those backgrounds are going to be photo bashed. But a lot of time you might just want some sort of direction for your project, right? So you want a little bit of visual impact to guide you towards your end goal. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so we got, I think, 6 or 7 weeks before we get to the Easter break, which is going to be the end of March, right? So keep that in the back of your head. I think it's the 29th of March is going to be where we break for 3 weeks. 26th of March, it looks like, will be the Friday. So it starts on the 27th. You'll have 3 weeks off, off. But these days, we don't know what that's going to mean as far as the outside world. But for us, right, it means that hopefully we can catch up on any work that we need to get done and do a really cool concept for our finals. So I've got 2 projects that I want you guys to try and finish by that date. But technically, I'm only going to have them due at the end of term, right? I'm okay if you guys turn everything at the end. But I would like to see where you are near the end of next month, really, which is plenty of time, really. The 2 projects are a low poly 3D model using a texture made from photos, and then a low poly 3D model with a texture made in Photoshop. Hopefully, we'll do some painting. If you have a digital tablet, right, it's going to make your life a bit easier. But I'm not going to do anything too crazy in there, right? You can get away with painting with the mouse. So yeah, we'll get to other apps in a second here. But again, right, like the goal is not just 3D objects in here. What I want from you guys is to be able to have transportable textures, right, or game engine ready textures. So what that means is that you can't just go into the material editor, move some sliders around, it looks like red metal. So I'm going to call it a day and move on to the next texture, right? Um, those kinds of textures you'll start to see are great if you are in the sort of pre-rendered realm. We'll look at that in a second. But are going to be locked to that piece of software that you made that material in. So what we want is textures that will be able to work in Maya and look the same in Unity. We're going to build up to using Substance Painter. That will be what we use for our final project. But for the first two, I want you guys to see how old school textures are made, right? Because it's going to give you a lot of insight into the process and into the kind of, again, sort of like the pitfalls that can cause um, your 3D models to have bugs or not be clean or not look quite right in other applications, right? So by going through the process of learning photo textures and hand painted textures, it's going to enlighten you a little bit on into how to overcome any bugs once you get into PBR texturing, physics-based rendering, which is the newer sort of way to make textures. And for all of these, right, I do want you guys to use Maya. Some people think of Maya as a form of torture, and I myself was in that crowd, back when I was in school. I was a 3D Max user. I had come from using Lightwave, which hardly even exists anymore. And I thought Max was the bee's knees. I hated Maya, didn't want to use it. It's clunky, it's difficult. Yeah, it's all those things, right? And more. It is definitely torturous at times, and it is very complicated. Um, the reason why we use it is because the school says we have to use it, and because all the pros in the industry use it. I know that there's a lot of um, sort of grassroots around Blender, right? Blender's coming up in a big way. It's got some awesome tools in it. I'm not going to deny it's fun to use. It is fast. It is pretty. Um, and I don't super mind if you go to other 3D packages, right? You can go and do some work in other 3D packages, especially you advanced guys. I do want you to explore, right, your own kind of preferred pipeline. Um, but the reason why I want you guys in Maya is to learn sort of the clean modeling techniques and low poly modeling techniques that are going to pay off down the line when you're modeling kind of your mid-level and high-level models that are going to get more difficult. This is just because we are in a game program, right? And there are certain ways that things are done in the game industry that are slightly different to the film industry. So one of those things being that in the film industry, their goal is to create the prettiest, most photorealistic, ultra realistic, hyper realistic image that they possibly can. Pop this into chat. And you can see that here in this Guardians of the Galaxy shot breakdown, right? Where a single frame of a movie might be 30 layers of different renders that are all like photoshopped together in a sense, and have different sort of focuses, everything from the geometry to the reflections to subsurface scattering and ambient occlusion and all these things, right? There are lots of things that go into the movies that we see in terms of 3D, but they've also got the big bucks, they've got the big servers, and their render times can be just absolute madness, right? Like I mean, I came from more of a film 3D short filmmaking background, and sitting there and watching the renders tick out is a pain that I kind of want to spare you guys. So I'm trying to steer at least this class away from having to render out tons of frames, right? We'll definitely do some rendering. We'll look at lighting, and rendering, but it is going to be important for you to learn kind of the game way of making things, which is to take as many shortcuts as possible while still coming up with the most beautiful possible product, right? And our goal is to optimize, optimize, optimize to get us running at the maximum number of FPS. Right now, our standard is 60 FPS, 60 hertz happens to be the refresh rate on most LCD TVs, right? 1080p, 60 hertz. That's our gold standard right now. We just had a new console generation that's going to rise up, right? PC gamers already on the 144, 240 hertz bandwagon, right? So now we have a lot more space between the 60 hertz frame rate, that we used to be limited to, and now 144 frames per second. So the more that we can optimize our games, especially things like multiplayer games, right, or skill-based games that require, hair trigger reactions to be able to dodge and things, the better our players' experience it's going to be, right? They're not going to be frustrated by frame rate drops and things like that if we did our job as 3D artists correctly. Additional components. Yeah, Arnold is one of them. I don't remember what other components are in there. Substance. Okay, yeah, Jamie, you installed recently. We don't use Bifrost, but you can install it if you want to play with that stuff. We're not going to be using all the crazy plugins and things necessarily, right? The nice thing about Maya is that it can do everything. You could go and make Guardians of the Galaxy 3 in your room by yourself, right? And it would, you could do it all possibly in Maya. In fact, these guys are just down the road at Frame Store. You can do physics simulations, you can do liquid simulations, like all these crazy things. But it's going to take you just years and years to be able to hit this level, right? You can see they also have like muscle simulation going on and like bone ragdolls and crazy particles everywhere that have physics attached to them, right? Like all this stuff is possible in Maya, and it's cool that you can learn all of it in one 3D package, right? And this is what Blender is shooting for, right? They want all of those little bits that Maya has inside of Blender, and to make it free for everybody so that everyone can kind of get into this industry. Maya is free for students, right? But it's quite expensive in the real world. And it does take quite a bit to, quite a lot of specialists to create all the different moving parts that go into even a single frame of some of these movies. All right, so this is our, I would call our pipeline, right? Our render pipeline, our game pipeline for our projects coming up. Typically, like I said, you're going to want to start with some sort of concept. You are going to do your modeling inside of Maya, potentially get away with modeling in Blender or Max while I'm not looking, right? Since I'm not looking over your shoulders. Just know that if you are using, if you really, really, really want to go and use a third-party piece of software, that I can't provide support for it, right? I can't fix your problems. And the whole reason why, you guys are here is so that I can kind of ease your passage through all of this stuff. And Lauren, I can fix your problems, right? So I highly suggest you stick with Maya. As for versions, I'm going to be in 2019. 2020 is out. I even have 2018 open over here. Stability comes first, right? You don't want to be running in an unstable version. So this is why I prefer to go for the old versions, right? We're not doing anything crazy and new that requires Maya 2022 beta version, right? We're not like trying to reinvent the wheel here. We're just trying to catch up, right, to where the industry is, um, so that we can let our own creativity to it. Texturing, we'll be using Photoshop. You can try 2020. Sorry if you guys went ahead and got 2020 early. We will be exporting inside of an FBX file format, which goes all the way back to like, I think we'll export in version 2013 FBX. So that is what's going to get pumped out at the end to our game engine Unity. We'll also be using Substance Painter for texturing. We're going to hold off on that until around the midterm. I think we'll start to use Substance, which is a really fun program. It's really the bridge between Photoshop and Maya or general 3D programs that the 3D industry had been waiting for like decades. But we will go through kind of the old school ways of touching things up in Photoshop manually, so that you can see what's going on in the background there. That will help you fix problems in Substance Painter down the line. I know because I've had to do it myself, right? I've had to fix my Substance Painter textures in Photoshop and know how to plug things in manually again. So again, being able to like look behind the computer and know which plug goes into which port, right, is gonna be important for you guys to fix your own bugs, especially since I'm not there to help you out and show you the button a lot of, most of the time. It's it's always going to be helpful, right, to know what's going on behind the scenes so that you can sort of use logic to fix some bugs that you run into. Alrighty, so I think Laura already grabbed attendance, and I haven't seen any late joiners, so I think we got everybody today. Attendance is 15% of your grade. What I did last semester, what I might do this semester as well, once we get the ball rolling a little more, is I might do some attendance quizzes based on the PowerPoint, right? So that I can make sure that you have sort of participated or read through the lecture and watched the lecture content. So not 100% important for you to be here every single week, right? But it will start to affect your grade if you take time off, because you do lose a little bit of points, for each day that you miss. Oh yeah, sorry, I do throw memes in there occasionally. Let's see. So meeting my technical specifications is a big part of this class. It's easy to go out there into a 3D app and just shove some stuff together. What I want you to do is to slow it down, right? Like this is going to be a tortoise and the hare situation where if you rush through a project, you're going to hit 75%, 80, even 90% point. And you're going to notice something that you did that totally breaks the next part of the pipeline, right? Like whether it's going to be you shove too many pieces together, right? And now you've got back faces and you've got intersections without edges on them. And now you're trying to unwrap your object and create a smooth texture across those faces, right? This is the kind of thing that we try to avoid by going a bit slower and being more meticulous with our work. So it's not just about kind of like throwing some paint up on the canvas, right? It's about very carefully going through and laying those brush strokes down and make sure as you go that things are the way that they should be. And with that said, it's 10:34, so let's take a little break. Hopefully you guys are installing Maya, downloading Maya, and it will be done within 15 minutes. We'll come back at 10:50 and do 2 exercises, which I'm going to post in chat. Where did I put those? Put it up on Discord, but I'll post it here as well. So do me a favor, download these 2 files and open them up. Notice that you can have multiple Maya windows open. And we'll come back in 15 minutes and we're going to make the red version look like my green version. So I'll walk you through the, well, I had to create a second Discord account because I was getting notifications from students at 2 in the morning. So yeah, now my school account is on the browser account, at least on this computer. So yeah, I have to remove my personal Discord from the web version. All right, so grab these files, make sure you can open them. We'll come back at 10:50. I'll see you guys then. Okay, so looks like people who left were able to rejoin. That's good. So yes, my interface, it's very, very complicated. But this is because really at the top here, there are 2 to 3 ways to get to most of these tools, right? So you can do most of your controls the same way that you would in Unity when you're flying around in actual space. To rotate the camera around an object, you hold Alt with your left hand. So you FPS gamers, WSAD on your keyboard is where your left hand is going to sit while you're using Maya, right? So this will come a little bit easier to PC gamers, but do get in the habit, right, of just letting your left hand sit on WSAD. That will give you access to the shortcuts that you need to perform in Maya. So left clicking selects an object. Holding right click lets you choose what kind of part of the object or what component you want to select, right? So if I want to create, well, let's do a creation. So up here in this orange set of boxes, right? These first ones are objects that you can create just by clicking on any of these objects here. You got spheres, cubes, cones, donuts, etc. If I want to select a piece of an object, whether it's the edge or the vertex, I'm holding right click to bring up the radial menu, right? Which is, again, almost like a FPS menu, right? Like your gun selection is sometimes done through a radial. Let's see if we can get more light in here. My light's off. My light's off. Okay, so holding right click, you're going to be doing it a lot. And if you need to select edges, you need to select verts. Oh, I have symmetry mode on. You need to watch to make sure that this isn't on. It has a little drop down. I'm just going to turn it off. And then practice rotating around objects, right, by holding Alt, left Alt with your thumb, most likely, and then left click and hold in order to rotate. Mouse wheel zooms you in or out. Also left Alt and middle click pans you back and forth. So this is why your left hand is always going to be on WSAD. It's because a lot of stuff just requires you to hold down Alt in order to access there. Yeah, don't worry about it if you weren't able to get Maya installed yet or anything, right? Or if your PC is on the mend. It happens, and that's why I record these and then I try to upload them as soon as class ends, so that way you guys can get to them when you need. I also find that with the interface being so complicated, when you're following a tutorial, it's a lot easier to have some sort of second screen, right, and be working on your main screen. So if you have a spare laptop, an iPad, or just your phone, right, you might want to have the tutorial over there, or you can rock the kind of a split screen with your browser open. Oh yeah, well, some people are still downloading. It's not a big deal, but do please come back to these when you're done downloading. All right, so if you're looking at your cube scene, hope everyone was able to get it open. Let's just go through the motions, because it's good to do. So if you just have a blank screen, right, you can drag Maya files directly into the interface. It will give you this little error-ish pop-up. It's just telling you that you're in the student version. It does do that to you every time that you save your project as well. So if we go File, Save, and call this exercise. Right, it's also going to put it somewhere weird, so make sure you put stuff back in your documents, maybe inside of a Maya projects folder. Then that student pop-up is always going to be there. All right, so to get these red cubes into these house forms, we're going to use my favorite tool, the extrude tool. And there are a couple of different ways that we can get to that. So first off, we need to change so that we can select our polygons, or our faces as they are known in Maya. So a cube is made up of 6 faces. We're going to hold right click, drag down on the mouse until face mode is selected, and then let go of right click. That's going to let us select the faces on the object that we have selected. I'm going to select this top face. And then we have the extrude icon up here in the top center. If you want to use the icon, it looks like a orange skyscraper on a white parking lot, maybe. Or the shortcut is Control E. Or is it just E? I'm freaking out because it's been a while, Maya. All right, Control E gives me an extra face that I can now extrude upwards. It will also give me a set of controls around the face, these manipulators or control arms, or things are going to, when you first extrude, right, they're going to give you the option to move things around, right? I can also Control Z to get out of that. I can scale things by clicking on the different color cubes in here. Now, the blue cube isn't going to do anything because it's a perfectly flat surface. But if I grab the green cube, I can scale inwards. Okay, and I'll do the same thing with the red cube. Scale that in to make mine look like the green one. I can also scale this X and Y at the same time by looking for this flat square. Right. And then you can just eyeball the approximate shape here. We're not going to get too accurate. Yeah. Menu to the right for all this. Yeah, so the nice thing about Maya is that you do have multiple different ways to access these tools. So I'll try to give you the ones that I use. And then, yeah, we can also share your methods. So there's a menu to the right here, the modeling toolkit, which you can get to, I think, under here somewhere. It's not one that I personally use. If your workspace, right, doesn't look like mine, you can go to Windows Workspace, change it to Maya Classic, or to Modeling Standard. It's going to be the one that has the tools over here on the right for you. Again, these tools are also by default at the top. They also have keyboard shortcuts, right? Control E in this case for extrude. So let's extrude this one as well. E, I drag upwards to raise that face up, and then grab the scale here and I can drag it in. I can also deselect this and I can hit, I can hit R to scale things in. So if you ever want to move, rotate, or scale, that's where having your fingers on WSAD is going to come in handy. W is to move objects or faces. Right? E is to rotate. And R is to scale. So same shortcuts as Unity for some things. What's SFM? I don't know SFM. All right, so the next little house has got a roof on it with some overhang. So to get that overhang, I'm going to do the same thing to start with. I'm going to do Control E, but instead of scaling inwards, I'm going to scale up, right? So I'm going to push this face outwards to give myself that overhang. I could also just grab this blue square, drag it out. Now it's worth noting the shimmer on this face here, right? As I move around, it's kind of flickering. This means that there are two faces that are sandwiched on top of each other and are actually taking up the exact same space in the 3D space, right? So they are overlapping. So whenever you see this kind of stripy, shimmery look, it means that you have two faces occupying the same space. What you generally want to do is grab that face, right, and move it ever so slightly upwards or downwards, and that will get rid of that. You don't necessarily have to do it for this one. How do I move the camera like that? Okay, so moving the camera again, holding Alt, and then holding left click rotates, holding middle mouse pans, and then mouse wheel to zoom. Okay, yeah. And again, this is why people, stray away from Maya. Maybe it's because the interface is very complicated, but it's only complicated because it can do all these different things, right? Like, so we're not even going to touch all these other menus, but it can do all this stuff, right? Which is why it's fun to learn, because then once you specialize or choose something that you want to go chase, you don't necessarily have to go get a whole bundle of plugins or third-party apps. All right, so let's use a new shortcut for extrude this time. This time I'm going to select this top face and I'm going to hold down Shift and drag that face upwards, and that will extrude the face upwards as long as I'm in the move tool, right? So W for the move tool, and then Shift lets me extrude it. I don't need that second one though, so I'll just leave it here. And then to scale in the top, hit R for scale. I'm just going to scale it along the x-axis there. Okay, so these two are looking alike. Notice that when I select on a different object, right, it stays in face mode or in polygon select mode, right? It's not just selecting the whole object, it's only selecting a face at a time. So if I do want to say move this object, right, I can't just move the face. I have to hold right click, go back to object mode. Now it's selecting the entire object and I can move that object as a whole. All right, so next one we have the crate. For the crate, we're going to bring up the extrude menu this time. So we're going to go to face mode, hold right click and drag down. I'm going to drag over the entire cube to select all the faces. Now, if I do an extrude, you'll notice that it brings up this little dialog box, which lets me change the values. So this works similar to your properties in Unity, right? Where if you drag along these properties, it will change the value and it will increase the amount that it is extruding. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to leave that at 0. I'm going to turn keep faces together off. And then I'm going to increase the offset to about 0.1. And because I have keep faces together off, it's going to apply that operation to all of the faces that I had selected. And then the last thing I need to do, actually, once I have all of these where they are, now I want to extrude again. And this time I'm going to change the offset. I can either change the local translate here to a negative 0.1, or I can also just grab one of the faces, right, that has the manipulator arm on it and drag on the blue arrow. And I'll run through this one again because it is a bit tricky. Okay. All right, so if I'm in object mode, I'm going to change into face mode by holding right click, dragging downwards, so I'm in face mode. Select all of the faces by just dragging over it. I can also click on an individual face and then hold down Shift to keep selecting faces. Or if you are an Uber Pro, you can hold down Alt, or not Alt, Tab, and drag across faces, and it will select anything that you click on, or deselect if you are deselecting. Oh wow, Karnak is blowing up over here with the tabs. So generally, you want to try and just drag select. That's going to be your fastest method, right? You can shift select to select individual faces as well. That means panning around the object. Once I have it selected, I'm going to click on extrude, or I can do Control E to extrude. And the first thing I'm going to do, which one did I change? Offset. Oh, I need to turn keep faces together. And then I need to do local translate. Oh no, not translate. Offset. Offset to 0.1, keep faces together off. That'll give me this. So now that I have that extra geometry, right, I want to make it like this one, where the faces are pushed in a little bit. Since I have them all selected, I can just do extrude again, Control E, and change the local translate number to 0.1, or if I want to go lower right, I can change the value manually, or I can just grab the manipulator arm on the blue arrow, right? So when you have multiple faces selected and you do an operation on all of them, it's just going to pick one of the faces. I guess it's usually probably the first one that you select, or sometimes the last one that you've selected. And then whatever you do to that selected, that one where the arm is, it's going to apply that to all the other faces at the same time. So a lot of the trick, or what determines, how you become a pro in 3D modeling, is how fast you can do things, how efficient you can get from A to Z, and how few clicks you need to do any one operation, right? So if you can do an operation, say creating this crate in, say we took about like 5 clicks and like 2 button presses, right? Like 3 button presses. That's what companies want to see, right? They want to see somebody who can work really fast. I could spend all day here, going to face mode, clicking on things like changing tools, swapping, back to move, extruding again, go to the next face, right? All that stuff is totally valid. It will get you from A to Z, right? But you're going to spend a lot more effort, and it's going to start to get frustrating, right? Because you're spending so much time in app. So my teachers they taught me how to be what we call a rapid prototype artist, which is we quickly create things that are good enough to demonstrate in a prototype format. Then later, when we have the time, when we have the money coming in, then you spend the time to make things commercial ready, right? Like ready for the public. But a lot of times you just want to knock something out, right? Get a good idea of what it's going to look like. Be able to show that to people who understand what they're looking at, and then be able to secure funding from those kinds of demonstrations, right? So if you can knock something out very quick that somebody might think, oh, it'll take you a month to make this, and you can be like, oh, well, I'll give you a demo tomorrow, right? I'll work on this and I'll get you a demo in 2 days. You're going to beat the competition, right? If they're shopping around for other people to work on something for you, you're going to save yourself time, and you're going to get paid more per hour, right? Because you can say, oh yeah, that's a 5-hour job. I can do it in 2. You still get paid for those 5 hours generally, right? All right, so last little house on the prairie here. Same deal, we're going to go to face mode. So holding right click, face mode, select the top face. We'll use Control E to create a new face, right? Keep in mind that when you hit extrude, right, it is not immediately apparent that you have extruded something. If I were to click away and forget that I have an extrude there, it is still there, right? That extra face, that extra geometry is still hiding there. So if I were to extrude it again, what can sometimes happen is that you will get things that are on top of each other. And this is where you get that shimmering effect, right? Where now I have 2 faces occupying the same amount of space. In that case, usually if you can, try to undo to the point where you can find that face and either get rid of it, right? Or use that instead of starting over. Okay, so with an extrude, first I'm going to scale it up. So I hit R to scale, go to the scale tool, and I extrude it again, Control E, bring the roof up. And again, sometimes I will use the manipulator tools within the extrude tool, right? I'll just leave them all up here. Although typically I find it a better habit to just switch to the tool that I'm going to use. So I'll just, since my hand is over there anyway, right, I'm just going to like jump it right into hitting R and then scale it down to where I need it. So I'm not really like stuck looking at all the other bits of the extrude tool. Now to make the door and the window, we're going to do something similar that we did with the crate. Select the front face here. I'm going to extrude, but I'm not going to push it in or out. I'm just going to scale it down to about a door-sized shape. And then I'm going to move it down so that it almost touches the ground here. Notice that if I do move it past the ground, right, it will let me do that, but now I have issues at the back here that I don't want, right? So typically I want to keep it just above the ground there. Then I can extrude again, right? You can either use one of the icons here or Control E. I'll push the door frame inwards. Could also use the pop-up tool, just like so. Same thing for the window. Select one of the walls. Use the extrude tool. Scale down so that I have some extra geometry, right, for the window. extrude again so that I can get the window sill, I guess, and then push it in so that we get our little house. One more to make the rainbow. I've got that crying little bear here. So Cleo wants to say hi. So this is Cleo. We'll do the little rainbow arc, and then we will switch over to the cylinder exercise if we've got time/brain energy. Yes, Cleo's that's a good girl. My little helper. All right, so the last one is a little bit trickier. Right, we could do it manually. We could extrude multiple times to get to this rainbow section, but we want the fastest possible way. So what we're going to do, select the cube, go to face mode, and select this top face. I'm going to hold shift and select the line in space. Now this is a pixel perfect level of selection here. So again, having a gamer mouse, having a high quality tracking and not using your mouse pad is going to make your life easier. If you're using your mouse pad, Maya is quite difficult. Then with the face and the line selected, I'm going to hit extrude. It's going to give me this mess. And what it's done is it's pulled that face, right, and extruded it way over here. What I want to increase is the divisions number. So you'll see that that is creating additional points along the line where it is creating a curve. If I drag this up, put it up at 25, then I can get this arc shape. So I'll do that one again from scratch. The cube selected, go to face mode, left click on the top face, hold down shift, left click on the line. With both of them selected, now I can extrude, and I just increase divisions. And you can play with some of these others if you want to test what they do. I don't think that's particularly interesting. Maybe offset creates an interesting one. So it's not letting you select the line. Can't select the line. It sounds like a familiar bug, but I can't remember what the solution would be. Make sure, let's see. See if you can select it in object mode. If you can just click on it. Can't see a line. You can shift drag it. Let's see. Yeah, you can. So if you hold shift and just create a box around it, maybe. Yeah, we need to stay in face mode when we actually do the extrusion, but it should let you select it. Let me see. It's not an issue. Okay, yeah, I mean, I guess Maya just being tricky, just throwing you a curveball there. So in face mode, select the top face, shift, grab the line, and then hit extrude and increase the divisions to smooth out the extrude. So this can be handy for creating things like wires. If you're making an old school telephone or something, or if you're making telephone poles, anything where you want to keep the outside shape of something and then have it follow some sort of path, right? You can use this extrude method. All right, so that gets us to this point. Just zoom out, take a screenshot. I usually use the snipping tool. So if you click on your start menu, you type in snip. It'll bring up this little tool and hit new. And you can drag a screenshot. If you're on Mac, it has its own shortcut. I'm sure some Windows Shift S. Oh, really? I didn't know that they had made a shortcut for it. So drag a screenshot, jump into Discord, and just pop me a direct message with a screenshot. That way as well, we can just have, start a conversation on Discord. Oh God, I realized I'm going to get like 40 notifications. That's all right. I have the noise turned off. But yeah, that way, in the future, if you guys have issues, you can just send me a direct message on good old Discord, and I will try to help you work through your problems. We should also be able to do sort of screen shares, right? And we can do one-on-one calls to solve any bigger issues down the line. Yeah, don't worry if you just downloaded. Oh, apparently notifications on my phone are still on. Let me turn on. Do not disturb. Cool. Alrighty, cool. Getting your guys' screenshots. Nice. Okay, just through direct message. So for this one, you don't need to share it and like share your art or anything. We're not making art just yet, right? We're just learning the tools. But let's look at what our project is going to be for next week. So we do have, we have some booleans coming up in the cylinder. So we'll do this as well. Maybe I'll give you guys a little break. But as for what we have to look forward to this week, what I want you guys to do is go to this website, modelsresource.com. Okay, we got to pass this. So what we're going to do with this is we're going to download a character model of your choice. And you guys are going to reskin that character model by editing the texture. So once you've found a model that you like, I chose this cowgirl model, looked pretty cool. Drag it into Maya. Sometimes they are huge. And oh, it's giving me ghost textures. What is the ghost texture fix? I forget. It might take a few to find one that works correctly, but just go to the shortcut. Display. You guys don't need to touch any of this stuff in the material editor just yet. We'll get there. But I'm just going to use this to get her to display properly. All right, so let's say you download a character model from this website. Ooh, yeah, Ramon, you want to keep some space on your main drive, right? Don't fill up your C drive. Personally, I keep at least 100 gigs of space on my C drive, just so that it can use that space as a page file. If you've got secondary drives, right? Make sure you go into your Windows settings and turn those on as far as page files go. So what I want you guys to do this week is to find a character model that's already got a skin, got a texture on it, and then to take that texture file, go into Photoshop and edit it in some way. If you want to, completely change the look of a character, you can do that. This is how we get things like, what do they call it? Boozette and like the Bowser version of Princess Peach and stuff, right? You guys all play games. You all know that games these days have lots of different skins for their characters generally. We're not going to necessarily mess with the geometry at this stage, right? I just want you to mess with the textures because this is how I got into all of this world of 3D modeling. So I thought this would be a fun one to start out with, to go and grab a ready-made model and just see, start to piece together in your brain just what is happening here between the world of the texture and the world of the character. What we have here, for example, is a unwrapped character model, which means that each of these faces have been assigned a flat area for texturing, right? And when you say paint a face over the area that has been mapped to the head, right, it will change the color of that face and will display it on the model, right? So by adding up all these things, we get a complete picture. So what I want you guys to do for this week, if you're just starting out, right, if you're not super confident, I don't mind if you just do sort of like some recolors, right? Change the hair color, change up the hat from black to brown or something like that, right? Just do a bit of experimentation. I don't want you guys to spend hours on this or anything, not even a whole hour, maybe just like half an hour. Save over the original texture file so that you don't have to relink it. By default, right, this file is going to be linked to the character that it comes with. Just be aware that it can get trickier. You might need to download a couple different models to find one that's a little bit simpler. For example, I downloaded this Todoroki model from My Hero Academia. When you have the model open, press 6 on the keyboard. That will display the texture. But in some cases, when you go and you look at the texture file, right, they might have a whole ton of stuff in there. All we need to really worry about is the color. Oh geez, they got a whole body unwrap for Todoroki. I guess there is a shirtless mode for Todoroki. For the fans, for the fans. But here, for example, here is his clothing model, right? So you can get on here. You could go ahead and change the colors and things here. And it looks, I mean, by my eye, it looks like they might have even used Substance Painter to make this this texture, which is something that we have to build up towards, right? To look forward to. I don't mind if you guys get into Substance Painter earlier, but like I said, I do want you to learn the old school methods, right? Because all of this software kind of sits on top of it anyway and does some of the annoying work for you, right? By linking files together and things. But when that connection gets broken, right, you want to be able to kind of flip the computer around and know which cable needs to be plugged in, right? Like you want to be able to, yeah, Todoroki is the best character, right? But yeah, we will do kind of the old school methods of exploring how these things are set up, right? Because since we are dealing with the game engine itself, right, we're like the last stand before the consumer, right? There's all of this pre-production and production that needs to happen before it gets to game engine. As game developers, right, we are the wall between sort of the production and creative world and this commercial world where we sell things, right? So we need to make sure that everything is perfect before we get it out there. And knowing how all of these pieces fit together is going to it's going to help you get to that point where you can quickly, fix bugs and things without having to say call up your art lead at 12 at night and be like, where's the button for displaying textures or whatever it's going to be, right? Even if you're a programmer, right, knowing a little bit of this stuff is going to make you so much more valuable to the company because you can knock through a lot of stuff a lot faster, right? You don't have to arrange meetings, right, to meet up with somebody and ask them how to do something or have them explain it to you. And this is also where we get some of the geniuses of the industry, the most famous people who became millionaires and billionaires, right? They generally were programmers who knew this much programming and this much art, and then you get things like Minecraft, right? You get the notches of the world where you just need to know a little bit of it, but that's enough to push it out, right? That's going to get you a product that you can put out into the world. Yeah, I don't know why his eyes aren't working. I think there's probably a different texture type on there, so you might run into some of that stuff. We'll get more into the hypershade if you click on this little orb at the top here. You can access the character materials. It's kind of for another week for now. I would prefer if you guys just worry about getting the character model in there. Some of them come with bones. You can also go to shading X-ray joints if you want to see the bones in the model. Potentially you could pose your character. Let's see what we can do. The nice thing about using ready-made models is that they, so we get them to, so you can pose them, yeah. So, sorry. Well, I mean, if we were gonna get really fancy, we would slap some mocap on this guy, and he'd be jumping around. But we'll get there. We'll get there. Again, characters are about as hard as it comes for 3D modeling. That's what we're doing for the second years this semester. And oh boy, they don't know what's about to hit them because it is so difficult, guys. But this process of just digging in there a little bit, seeing what's going on, right? Seeing how things are put together that are already finished, right? And just editing them slightly, right? Modding, basically, is a great way to get into the industry. And this is even how people get hired these days, right? As you create a really nice mod for a piece of software, the devs are going to hear, right? Because they are typically on the web looking at what people are talking about with their own pieces. And then, yeah, we're focusing on environment modeling, Damon. So all of our projects will be prop modeling and environment models. We're not going to jump into characters just yet for this term, right? But it is something that I want you to have in the back of your mind for next year. And for side projects and things, it's always good to be able to just knock out some characters for prototypes and things if you want full control of your game. But it is very difficult to get, especially to get AAA quality. This isn't even a AAA game, I don't think. Oh wait, I think this is from Shonen Jump Force, so I guess this is technically a AAA game, right? Maybe it's not quite AAA, but a 8 rank game. Alrighty. B rank, okay. that says B rank, D rank. Oh geez, I didn't realize it was that bad. But this site is really cool, right? Because people, these are just gamers, hackers, right? Modders who want to be able to access different models. Keep it kid friendly, please. There are some sexier models out there. I mean, including Mr. Todoroki himself, right? He's got the shirt on, luckily, but all that stuff. Apparently, he's got. Oh no, he doesn't have body underneath anymore. Keep it PG a little bit. I don't mind seeing a bit, but yeah, you guys can do that stuff in your own time if you want to do stuff a little bit more racy. But yeah, I wanted to leave the door open on this, right? Find your favorite character if you want. There's a lot of Nintendo stuff and PlayStation stuff in here. I don't see as much Xbox stuff. But there are tons and tons of character models in here. I'm sure you'll find something that you'll like. Maybe you want to make the ultimate Donkey Kong that you always wanted to play in Smash Brothers, right? And then that one you can post up in the Discord. I think we should probably just stay in our lane, right? Probably stay in the 3D modeling lane. We don't want to overwhelm Rob's channel too much with our spam. And for this one, I also want you to just use the screenshotting tool. We're not going to worry about rendering just yet. Yeah, we'll get to that soon enough. Okay, it's 11:35. Even this is pretty long for what I typically do for these lectures, but I think these first few classes are important. So we'll go ahead and do the cylinder exercise, but let's take 5. So if you want to browse models resource, or if you want to just get up and stretch or something, take a short break, and then we'll come back and we will do the cylinder exercise. All right. All right, we'll give people another minute. Or am I going to get like 40 different Sonic originals? That'll be pretty funny, actually. All right, 11:40. So let's knock this one out, and then we can call it a day at around noon. Maybe a little after if we have issues. So the first one we're going to do in the cylinder exercise is the Mario pipe. So hop back into Maya, grab the first cylinder. Right, this is just a default cylinder that I made, and I removed the cap. Maybe we'll get into that by the end of the day. All right, so first one, holding right click, going to face mode, selecting the top face. I'm going to do an extrude, Control E. And then what I want to do is I want these to go outwards first. So offset is the one that I need to change. Or I can also scale up using the, oops, maybe not that one. This blue square here. Scale it up a little bit. Then I'm going to hit extrude again, right? Either by clicking on the icon, hitting Control E, scale it up or move it up. This afternoon, it'll be uploaded. All right, so let's look at one other way to access extrude and our other tools. This is the absolute pro gamer move of Maya. If you ever see somebody using this modeling method, just give them props because they've put the time in to learn the craziness. So you can hold Shift and then hold right click to access a tools radial menu, which will let you also extrude as well as access some other tools here. So this is why I think Maya has become sort of the pro level tool, because you don't have to necessarily move your mouse outside to a menu or to a button every time that you're going to make an edit, right? You can do a lot of these edits and keep your mouse in the center viewport here. So this is generally just why you learn the keyboard shortcuts, right? That's going to get you to the same place. So Control E is our keyboard shortcut for extrude. But it is worth noting that if you want to become super, super fast and have people tremble when they see you modeling, you're going to use this method of holding right click or holding shift and then holding right click to get to these other radial menus. So there are radial menus underneath control, hold right click, shift, hold right click, or just holding right click, right? That's going to get you to these menus. Not necessary, right? But if you do want people to really just go like, wow, there's like some crazy skills going on here, and really impress them, right? Then you're going to learn all the shortcuts. So that's our Mario pipe. It's just 4 extrudes. Grow selection. Grow selection is shift and period, or the greater than, less than signs on your keyboard next to M. So shift and period will grow your selection. Shift and comma will shrink your selection. It's a handy one. All right, so this next one, I'm going to be in face mode. I'm going to squish it down to be about the same height as my little sundial over here. And what I want you to look at in this one is fast selection methods. Again, we could spend all day clicking each of these faces by holding shift. It's going to take us 16 clicks, right? Plus holding shift that whole time. It's a waste of time. So the 2 faster ways that we can select all these faces is either move down to the side of your object like so that it's almost flat, and then drag across the middle, right? That'll select all the faces along the edge that we want. Alternatively, I could select all the faces, and then I could just shift select the top and the bottom ones to deselect those, right? It's only 3 clicks. It's also very fast. I could also hold shift, click on one face, hold shift, and then double click the face next to it. And that's going to select everything in that ring, right? Everything that is connected to that face via an edge along that same axis. So left click on one face, hold shift, double click, we'll select the whole outer ring. Right? Yeah, this is why we work in quads, right? So we can do fast selection. Camera controls, hold Alt and left click to rotate around an object. You can also hit F to focus, just like in Unity, right? To bring an object to the center. Hold Alt and middle click to pan the camera back and forth, moving through space. I guess you can also hold right click and Alt to zoom back and forth, but if you've got a mouse wheel, that's going to be your fastest bet. All right, so again, quick way, so select all those center faces, click on extrude. If we just leave everything as it is and we increase the thickness, this is our result. We want to turn keep faces together off. And then we're also going to turn down the offset, I believe, but it might be a little bit tricky that way. So instead of using the tool for that part, right now I have my keep faces together off. I'm just going to find the manipulator arm here and squeeze one of those faces down so that it affects all the other faces. So let's go through that again. So select just the side edges, right? You can select the whole object in face mode, hold shift and deselect the top and the bottom, or you can drag select down the center of the object. Click on extrude or Control E. can either use the dialog box here. You will need to use the dialog box to turn off keep faces together. And then you can either use the manipulator arm here or the local translate. But then finally, we want to scale down the red cube on this manipulator so that we get this sun shape. Files are a violation. Is that your ads? Is that the model that you downloaded? All right, so for these next two, we're going to use booleans to combine the sphere and the cylinder. You'll notice that this sphere, if I go to object mode and W to move, that I can move this sphere out of this object. But this object over here, the sphere is part of it. And see on the inside that there is no internal bits to the bottom of the sphere. Only the top of the sphere exists there. The cylinder and the cubes. I don't get it. What's a violation of your Maya? Is that when you double click on the file, or did you try drag them in? Okay, so we're going to combine these two objects here, the cylinder and the sphere, into one. You can either drag select over both of them, or you can click on one in object mode and then shift click on the other one. Then we're going to go to the mesh menu up at the top here. Look for booleans, and we're going to use union. So when you let go, it brings up this little menu. It might look like nothing has changed, but really on the inside, it has deleted the bottom half of that sphere. Right, so now say if I were to select the top sphere, I can no longer remove it from that object, right? It is now one object. So I'll do that again. Select both objects, mesh menu, booleans, union. That will turn both into a single object. The next one, we're going to select I believe we select the cylinder first, and then we shift select the sphere. Mesh booleans, and we'll do difference. And that will cut that shape out of the cylinder to make this nice bowl or a cup. So booleans are handy, but they are also limited. Sometimes if you have complicated objects that you try to put together, the booleans might not be able to do that work for you. Sometimes you get lucky, but say these two objects are a little more complicated. Let's see if we do a union. It was able to figure out where to cut those lines. But just be aware that the booleans, it's not a foolproof method, right? It works with two very simple objects. If you get 10 objects, right, or if you're trying to put like fingers into a hand or something in a very complex model, it can struggle, right? The booleans is not a end-all, be-all tool. All right, so this last one, it's worth noting that the inside of this cylinder shows up as black. Now, what this means is that these are back faces, where if they are shown in engine, in a game engine, right? If I imported this object as it is into Unity or Unreal or any other engine, I would not see anything over here. All of this black area would be completely see-through. This is because polygons in game engines only have one side that is displayed, right? That side that is facing the camera. This is why you can sometimes fall through the world in a game, right? And if you look up, you can see everything in the world, right? You can see all the different pieces, but you can't see the ground usually. This is because um, we have these things called normals, which determine which direction the face is actually pointing, right? If that face is pointing towards the camera, right, towards my eye, then it displays texture, light can bounce off of it. If there is a back face, right, and the normal is pointing the opposite way, the camera does not see that face, no light bounces off it, it just goes straight through. And it's basically invisible, right? So this is, you'll have seen this in games before, whether it is you got stuck in a rock, right? Or like I said, you fall through a game world. Um, Colliders are separate, but kind of part of it, right? The collider is what's preventing you from going into that object to see the backside of it. And then the reason why we use this method, right, is just to save processing time, right? It's just if it had to remember that each face had two sides, right? That's double the amount of faces in your scene. Massive optimization win to just ignore them, right? Ads are still having issues with your files. A violation of the student version. Oh, really? That one I haven't run into before. Let me see if maybe I can export it as an FBX. That would get you the same options. I'll do that after we've done this part though. All right, so what we want to do in this case is we want to cap the cylinder or just add a face on the top to hide these back faces, right? So they're not facing the camera. To do that, I'm going to go into edge mode. So I'm going to select this cylinder on the right in object mode. I'm going to hold right click and go to edge mode. And then I'm going to double click on the edge on this top ring here to select that entire ring. Then I can go to the mesh menu and choose fill hole. And it's going to just pop a cap right onto that cylinder's ass. Yeah. So now this face is connected, it is welded, and we are happy campers. So this can happen sometimes with your models, right? Sometimes you need to delete a face to put things together, or the way that you've modeled something, right? Maybe you deleted something by accident, or it's lots of different times where you'll run into holes in your model. Just double click on that edge. It will do its best to try and find the ring around that edge. Mesh menu, fill hole. It looks like a white diamond with a round orange circle in the middle of the diamond. Click on fill hole. It will add a polygon face there, and it will weld it to the rest of the model so you don't even have to worry about it. That's all we have for this exercise. Take another screenshot and send it over to me when you're done. And if you know what you're doing for the character model and you feel confident, you can take off. If you're having issues, you can stick around and Laura and I will try and help you guys through it. What I'll probably do is take my dog out, and then I'll be back this afternoon to do sort of one-on-one help with people or calls. If we need to, I doubt we'll need to jump on that this week. But But otherwise, let's just jump back into the PowerPoint. Otherwise, your goal for next week before next class, right? So you have a week for next. Okay, got it working. So before next week, download a character model from Models Resource. Make sure that you can access that texture that it comes in with, right? Open it in Maya. Typically, these models from Models Resource will come with either an FBX file, which is what we like the most. That's what Unity uses. DAE files are also valid 3D object files, or an OBJ file is another file type that it is transportable between different applications. But what we really want is we want to make sure that we can find the texture that's being applied. If you download one and it's like this, where there are 40 different texture files, you don't have to edit them all, right? I would even recommend looking for one that is a little bit simpler, like my cartoony one. It's going to be a lot easier if all of the different pieces of that character are on one texture file. That way you can just pop into Photoshop and start to paint over it without having to do too much thinking, right? Because if I was going to do Todoroki here, like we looked at, I have one texture file just for his clothes, right? And then it has all these supplementary files where we're going to get to that down the line. The nice thing about Substance Painter that we'll see later is that it will auto-generate all of these extra files for you. But our first few models, we are going to learn how to make these files from scratch using the UV editor. But you can see here as well, Todoroki has texture just for his head, right? So this is pretty common for character models. Either having the head as the largest part of the texture, or just giving it its own texture, are both ways that we increase the amount of detail on the face, right? Since that is, as humans, right, we're going to look at the face first and then the body afterwards. Yeah, everything will go up on the VLE and on Discord. So I will post a video today. It'll be processed by Zoom, and then it'll be uploaded to YouTube, and it'll be processed by YouTube. That little process takes a couple hours, hour and a half or two. So it'll be up probably 2 or 3 o'clock today. The lecture video. I will save the file out, or the presentation out as a PDF, and you'll have the PDF. And then I will try to link the YouTube video once that is up as well. Any other questions, guys? I guess what we could do, I'm actually going to pull this one out of the lecture, but let's see if it'll play. Let's look at the some of the finals from last term. So I'm going to take this. I can't give you guys this link just because it's got people's names in here. Maybe I need to make a stripped down version. But you can see the kinds of things that people made last year for this final project, right? We made a full 3D scene with several 3D models in it, added lighting, added a camera fly-through, and then we used Unity as our render engine. So rather than spending hours and hours rendering out frames in Maya, we just pop things into Unity. So people got creative, right, with their lighting and things, which is and added things like particle effects, which is a lot easier in Unity than it is in Maya. And made all sorts of kinds of scenes, right? We have War of the Worlds. We've got like I think this one is a Skyrim cave coming up here with some props modeled, right? So the second project that we'll do is going to be a fantasy weapon. We'll make swords and axes and things. Well, you just may have to make one. and we'll texture those. But then the big project right at the end is going to be kind of a large out, or not super large, but an outdoor scene or an indoor scene with a couple different 3D models in it. And then we will put all that stuff into Unity and let Unity do the rendering for us. Yeah. See if there are any others. This one's pretty nice. So some people spent a bucket load of time like this one. Other people did smaller scenes, right? But you know, if you have some sort of dream scene that you want to make, we'll obviously spend some time working on concepts later. But start thinking about, you know, if you wanted to make something for a portfolio, what you would make, what kind of scene you would make. We are a game dev program, so I would encourage you to make it look gamey, right? Look like a game or a game that you would want to make, and then start to pick, you know, what kinds of 3D models you could potentially make from that. And I will obviously be around to give you guidance on like what I think is possible and what level of detail to aim for, etc. But people made really nice stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys are going to get up to just for the character. And then, yeah, I will talk to you over Discord during the week. Otherwise, we'll meet up here again, Zoom, same time next week. Yeah. Thanks, guys.